Hey everybody, it's Ashley Francis. I'm the holistic psychotherapist. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and the owner of Blue Sage Counseling and Wellness here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And today's presentation is going to focus on chronic stress. Yeah, everybody's favorite subject, right? Something that is definitely relatable and touches every single one of us and definitely people that we know. It's a very relevant topic and a very deserving of exploration. So we're going to put a little mental health spin on it. And so we're going to talk about what chronic stress is, the different types of stress, have a little mini lesson on the neuroscience of what exactly is happening inside of the body when we are experiencing stress. And then finally, we're going to cap it off with what we can do, different specific ways to be able to combat stress. So let's go ahead and hop in. All right, chronic stress effects and how to cope. So let's start with defining what stress is. What is it? According to the National Institute of Mental Health, it states that stress is the brain's response to any demand. The brain's response to any demand. It is just that. It is simply a response. So if that's the case, then we know that not all stress is bad. It's just simply a response. And how harmful it is largely depends on these three things: the intensity, the duration, as well as the treatment. So the argument there is if you're experiencing stress in the moderate to severe range for a longer period of time than you would like, or as soon as you start to experience some altered effects or negative effects associated with the stress, that's a pretty good way of being able to decipher that, yeah, the stress has reached a zone that is no longer helpful. And then also treatment. So we're talking about things like self-care, being self-aware, doing the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves, to engage in self-awareness, but also being able to talk to others about what's going on with us, be able to get other ideas. These are the things we're talking about with treatment. Okay, so let's first distinguish what the different types of stress are. It's pretty straightforward. You got short-term stress and then you've got long-term stress. So with short-term stress, it's really only experienced for a brief amount of time. Could be a few minutes, could be an hour, could be a day, maybe a couple days. So some examples here are an argument with a loved one, a public speaking event, hearing some disturbing news, or taking a test. So it's typically having to do with a singular event. Sometimes it can carry over into various hours and other days, but the rule of thumb here is that it's something that we can generally recover from without any lasting effects. So long-term stress is also known as chronic or toxic stress. This is the stuff that we are most concerned about because this is what causes the most illness and disease. So it occurs over the long period of time. Some examples are managing a long-term illness or even being the caretaker of someone with a long-term illness, a demanding job, an abusive relationship, being bullied at school, and prolonged social media exposure. And I'm gonna add one more in here too. The current political environment in 2020, 2021 is also contributing to a lot of stress, and COVID as well. All right, so we're going to do a little mini lesson on the stress response system. This is what gets activated when we are experiencing a stressor. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but essentially what is happening is when you experience a stressor in your environment, it gets picked up by the hypothalamus, which in turn wakes up the pituitary gland, which then in turn releases hormones down to the adrenal gland. And then the adrenal gland releases cortisol into the body so that it can help put the body into action if it so needs. Now, the other two parts of the brain that we want to draw attention to are the amygdala as well as the prefrontal cortex. So the amygdala is responsible for detecting that things are scary or dangerous. It's sort of this on and off switch, the yes or no. Is this something that is a threat or is it not? If it's deemed a yes, then it's making its journey over to the prefrontal cortex, which is the control center. This is what's responsible for our thoughts and our actions, our planning, our judgment, all of the executive functioning, the higher level stuff that distinguishes us from other mammals. This is what the prefrontal cortex is responsible for. So this is what is specifically telling us what sort of action it is that we need to take. So the amygdala is being able to detect that action needs to be taken, but the prefrontal cortex is giving us the information. What is it exactly that I need to do? Do I need to stand here and say something? Do I need to keep my mouth shut? Do I need to run away? Do I need to shut down? What is going to be my response? All right, so let's talk about some of the effects of chronic stress. So the idea here is that we are in a state of imbalance when the body is making more cortisol than it has a chance to release. So when the body is in that state of imbalance, that's when it starts to wreak havoc on the other parts of the body. So let's talk about some of the examples of that. Loss of sociability and avoidance of interactions with others. It kills brain cells and reduces the size of the brain. It shrinks, literally shrinks, the prefrontal cortex, leading to less memory and making it harder to learn. It increases the size of the amygdala, the part that is associated with emotion and detecting danger. And it makes the brain actually more receptive to stress over time. So you might notice that you become more sensitive to things that maybe you once were not so sensitive to. And this can also ebb and flow throughout our lives, depending on what sort of situations we're going through and developmental age and whatnot. A smaller hippocampus and chronic inflammation, those two things together have an increase in depression and mood disorders. Also have a reduction in serotonin. So this leads us to be more reliant on SSRIs, which are antidepressants. There's a disruption to the circadian rhythm, so we also have sleep problems. There's an imbalance between rational and emotional thinking. I think this is a really big one as it pertains to mental health in particular, because it helps to explain that the fact that the brain is changing, biologically, neurologically changing in response to chronic stress, which is then making you more susceptible to draw your thinking from the emotional parts of the brain versus rational. So you may be more emotional, you may be more sensitive, you may be more impulsive, just simply because you've been under chronic stress. There's other explanations for this too, but that's a main one. And then of course, burnout. We see this a lot in the corporate environment. So if you've been experiencing burnout, it may lead to feelings of having less achievement. You're not feeling as productive. You don't really feel that reward for all of the hard work that you've been doing. And that can lead to a loss of joy and purpose in your life. Okay, so let's talk about the continued effects of chronic stress. And so there's also an increase in the size of the putamen, which can contribute to hoarding behavior. Yes, structural changes in the brain can lead to hoarding behavior. It can appear in someone that it wasn't present in before, but over time it has developed. Yes, that can happen. The go-tos of being increased risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, and diabetes. Digestive, excretory, and reproductive systems stop working properly as well. So that's when we'll see a lot of IBS or Crohn's or infertility, anorgasmia, the inability to orgasm. These are all the result of chronic stress. So we're having these types of symptoms. A lot of people don't know or are not able to put the two things together to understand that it's actually stress that's causing your IBS, or stress that's causing your infertility, or stress that's causing your hair to fall out. So these are some things to keep in mind. Impairing the immune system, leading to more autoimmune diseases, and exacerbating already existing conditions. So the all important information that we want to focus on is, what the heck do we do about it? How do we get out of this vicious cycle? And it really does feel just like that. It's a vicious cycle. So we're going to talk about some of the go-tos. This is the stuff that most people talk about on a regular basis. It's very easily Googleable. I don't like to spend a whole lot of time on this type of stuff, just simply because we get fed a lot of this information through social media. Like I said, you can Google these types of things. They're go-tos and they absolutely are effective. I don't want to downplay the fact that they are absolutely effective in reducing stress. But I don't know about y'all, I'm really about getting to the root of the problem and getting really specific about what are some of the things that we can do that have not been discussed that tend to have more bang for their buck. So we're going to go over this briefly, and then we're going to talk about some of the more powerful stuff. Fast acting, hug from a friend, aromatherapy, creating art, taking a break, petting an animal, guided imagery, meditation, progressive muscle relaxation, breathing, taking a walk, cleaning and organizing, crying, watching a comedy, singing and dancing. And then the long-term things that are typically associated with lifestyle is eating a balanced diet, engaging in leisure activities, having positive self-talk habits, practicing yoga, expressing gratitude, prioritizing exercise, getting a hobby, journaling, and good sleep. So, like I said, these things are very important. They are things that you should be practicing. But if you're looking to dig a little deeper, let's talk about that stuff. Okay, so the not so obvious stuff. I like to make the distinction between what does it mean to be problem focused coping and what does it mean to be emotionally focused coping? And this can be hard to figure out. But basically what that means is that is it something that needs to change in your environment that's causing the problem, or do you need to change how you feel about it? Sometimes it's a combination of the two. For example, if you're in a super, super stressful job, maybe you need to quit that job. Maybe you need to find another one. Maybe you need to get out of that industry and get into another one altogether, because there's not going to be any end in sight if you just jump from one job to the other, and there's just going to be more stress. So that's an example of problem focused coping. Then the emotionally focused coping is if something's getting on your nerves, like if you're having issues in a relationship, there's nothing that you can really do to change that person. In fact, there isn't anything you can do to actually change that person. That change happens within them. So it actually behooves you to change how you feel towards that person or the behavior that they're expressing, because the problem lies with you. Why doesn't it make more sense to focus on how you feel about that problem? Because that's really the heart and the root of it that needs to be changed anyway. Next is to reassess your to-do lists. So basically what this means is improving your time management. You need to cut out what you don't need / the things that are not adding value to your life. And this seems straightforward, and it kind of is to some extent, but it's not always so simple, because what we have going on in our heads can be very different from what can be identified when we actually write things out or talk them through. So the idea here is you really want to take an inventory of what are the real priorities in your life versus the perceived priorities. Oftentimes we're running around chasing our tails because we have a perception of what is important to us. But if we take a step back and really look at it and we get really honest with ourselves, there are other things that are actually more deserving of our energy and attention. So when we talk about to-do lists, this isn't just about tasks that we need to do. This is really oriented towards the big picture. What is it that you're looking to get out of the tasks that you're doing? Why do you do them in the first place? So these types of things. All right, and then finally, obtaining social support. Talking face-to-face with someone actually releases hormones that reduce stress. This helps to explain why it has been so difficult for all of us during COVID, because we have not had the ability to talk face-to-face with one another. So obtaining that social support and having diversified sources of support can really help too. So you may have one group of friends that helps you with this, another group of friends that helps you with that. And then you've also got other business contacts that you rely on for some business consultation. You may rely on your family for certain things. The whole idea is to diversify your support network. Okay, so this is the final subject matter that we are going to focus on, and that is negative thinking. In my practice, I can wholeheartedly say that the cycle of negative thinking is one of the most influential problems that we experience as human beings, especially in this country, that contribute to chronic stress. So I personally believe that giving a good bit of attention to negative thinking habits and how to break them is one of the most effective ways to combat chronic stress. So very quickly, going through the 5 different types. Automatic. These are the types of things that pop in your head with absolutely no effort. The next are distorted thoughts, the things that don't fit all of the facts. They're just generally wrong. It's just something that you have adopted, you've taken it in, and you're just not letting it go. It's something that's distorted when we put it up against facts. unhelpful. It affects the way you feel and behave. It may stop you from getting what you want out of life. Just focusing on things that are generally unhelpful, focusing on the ways that the world is flawed, or the all of the reasons why you hate your boss, or all of the ways that your spouse gets on your nerves, or all of the ways that your children are driving you nuts. It's just unhelpful to overly focus on those types of thoughts. Believable. You accept facts, you accept these thoughts as facts and you just don't question them. It's become to the point where you have actually started believing all of these negative thoughts that aren't true, by the way. The things such as I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I am undeserving, I'm unlovable, I'm permanently damaged. So you actually believe these types of things, and it bleeds over into other areas of your life. And the last one is intrusive. You don't choose to have them. These are the things that tend to be violent in nature or disturbing. Yes, that's actually more common than people think. It can be very lonely to feel like, geez, I feel like I'm the only one that is having these really disturbing and violent thoughts and pictures in my head, when in fact, it's actually pretty typical. And it's also really hard to switch off. But the idea is that you want to make sense of it. You want to talk it out and figure out what's going on there. Why are these types of thoughts and pictures coming up in my head? Okay, so we're going to talk about ways to recognize negative thoughts. One is all or nothing thinking. This is the black or white. There is no gray. Everything is terrible. It's always going to be this way. Those types of things. Overgeneralization. If one thing is wrong, all is wrong. So if my morning started off really poorly, then the rest of the day is going to be just as crappy. Mental filter. You pick one negative detail and you just keep focusing on that. Discounting the positive, recognizing something good and then rejecting it. So you might be able to recognize the positive in something, but it doesn't last long. You go right back into the negative. Jumping to conclusions. This is when you're making interpretations without the facts. These are usually very impulsive types of thoughts. It must be this way, or this person is letting me down yet again. Mind reading. These are the negative interpretations of what others might be thinking. Operative word, might. Fortune telling. We anticipate things will turn out badly. Well, I've been here before. I've been in similar situations and it's never turned out well. So why would this situation be any different? Magnifying. That's where you exaggerate the importance of the negative. That you may be experiencing something that is in fact negative, but it just feels like it is so much more. Minimization, you're underestimating the importance of the positive. So this would be the opposite of magnifying. You, there again, are able to recognize the positive, but it just doesn't hold much weight. You know, the negative far outweighs the positive. Perfectionism. This is concerned with the shoulds and the musts and the blanket statements like I never, or you never, or you always. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Definitely, I am, I can be guilty of that one for sure. But basically, you're putting this undue pressure on yourself. I should be further along than I am. I'm not accepting of the present, and I'm not accepting of where I'm at in this moment. Self-blame. You see yourself as responsible for something negative that you aren't actually responsible for. I see this a lot in people pleasers or sensitive people. They have a tendency to take on the blame for not only themselves, but also the blame of others as well. It's just freaking exhausting. Again, I'm guilty of that one too. Actually, I'm guilty of all of these. I think we're all guilty of all of these. Let's be honest. Self put downs. So the negative label, I am bad. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. All right, so let's talk about how to challenge this negative thinking. The idea here is that you are either talking about it, or you're writing it down, or you're doing a combination of the two. So if you're working with a coach or a spiritual leader or a therapist, oftentimes these are the types of things that we're going to have you do, because we got to get specific about what are the thoughts that you are exactly having, and then we can insert the types of challenging questions or thoughts that can get you back on the right track. So the first category are questions that challenge the negative thoughts. Is there substantial evidence for my thought? Is there evidence contrary to my thought? Am I attempting to interpret the situation without all of the evidence? What would a friend think about this situation? If I look at the situation positively, how is it different? Will this matter a year from now? How about 5 years from now? And then the second set are questions that direct you towards the positive. So we're getting you out of the negative loop and shifting you over towards the positive, which can be challenging in and of itself. What's the best thing that could happen? Is there anything good about this situation? Starting to look for the loopholes, the silver linings. And then finally, asking goal-oriented questions. This puts us more into the action mode. Is this way of thinking helping me achieve my goals? Hey, if it's not, maybe you need to change it. If it is, maybe you need to capitalize on it. And what can I do that will help me solve the problem? Let's get real about this. Let's get logistical and strategic. What is it that I can actually do? And is there something I can learn from this situation? So even if we get stuck in the mentality of there really isn't a whole lot more that I could do to change this, I feel like I'm doing a really good job. Sometimes it's just a matter of switching your perspective over to maybe this is just a learning experience. Maybe I just need to look at it for what it is and attack similar situations in the future differently. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. Like I said, so not a fan of talking about all of the go-tos of being able to manage chronic stress. You could look that stuff up on the internet. You could talk about it with your friends. Being able to focus on the negative self-talk, your negative cycles, I really feel like that's what's going to give you the big bang for your buck. It's not to say it's the only thing that is responsible for chronic stress. We know that that's far from the truth. But this is something that's unanimous. It's relatable, it's universal. So go ahead and try out some of these tactics yourself and see how it goes. If you're looking for some extra help, I have put a link in the comment section, or excuse me, just a link to the video for a worksheet that has all of the questions that we just went over. Go ahead and start it. Why not? You have nothing to lose. And if you get stuck, then that would be a good time to reach out to a therapist. And if you are in the Charlotte area or in the North Carolina state, you can reach out to me for therapy. So, and the way that we do that is scheduling a free phone consultation at the link there. You can also just go to bluesagecounselingandwellness.com and then also check out other videos on this channel for free mental health tips. Yeah, that's about it. And so if you like this presentation, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Take care.